In 2017, government promised to get street children off the street with a program launched by the Minister for Gender to deal with streetism. The Ministry of Gender and Social Protection set up the operation Get Off the Street for a Better Life. For more than 4 years, the situation seemed to have gotten out of hand, with minors even from neighboring West African countries flooding the highways of Ghana to beg. In the following report, our reporter Justice Beidou digs into Accra's street begging problem.
This is one of Accra's dirty little secrets. It's the dead of the night on a cold street in the capital. This is home to hundreds of people who sleep rough in downtown Accra.
It's almost like a mini refugee camp here. The children who live here and their parents have come from West African countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Most of them sleep rough on hard pavements like this. And if you walk right up the street, there are hundreds more who sleep like this till morning, all in this Accra neighborhood of Aboseokai. The people who live here who have been speaking to me say on a daily basis, hundreds of them arrive in buses to Accra.
Poverty is what forced us out of our country. We began begging when we left home. We spent 3 months on our journey with our kids. Our government does not help us. We are only here because of poverty. When we get what we want, we'll go back.
Habibu Ademu is 10. Like many of the children here, his parents brought him from Niger. Their journey, he says, took them 3 months, making several stops until they got to Accra, where they have been begging for alms for a year now.
Some came for food, but others are also looking for more. For me, I wished I could go back to school, but we can't afford it. This is the reason we came to beg. We have been here for 2 weeks now. If my mom had money, she would have educated us. There are some beggars who want to make money from begging, to even build houses, but ours is just to feed and go back to school.
As dawn breaks, the children and their parents flood the streets of Accra, hand in arms. This is the Achimota overhead on the busy N1 highway. They run after every car in sight.
They beat us every day on the streets. They abuse us. They ask us to go and work because we are able. One day, a car ran over my hand and it got broken. This job is tough. We need help.
More than 61,000 persons below the age of 18 are living on the streets of Accra alone, according to a 2021 study by the Center for Social Policy Studies at the University of Ghana. The Beggars and Destitutes Act of 1969 makes begging criminal. And yet, like many other laws in Ghana, there's rarely any enforcement.
The ministry has initiated a program that Operation Get Off the Street Now for a Better Life. Everybody deserves a better life. The objective is to reduce the phenomenon of persons living on the street with such dreams that they cannot be held back. Data collection to create a database is ongoing, with 4,098 children already registered. Shelters have also been identified for us to begin this very month to move our children and persons and families off the streets into homes whilst we organize the reintegration for those who can go back home, those who can go back to school, and those who will be embarking on various training and capacity building activities in terms of income generating activities.
This is then Gender Minister Otiko Afisa Jaba speaking in 2017.
I can actually liken it to a situation of a time bomb that's about to take off.
Elikem Awuye is a child protection activist with the rights campaign group International Needs. She has spent years studying the subject and rescuing some victims of the streets.
Streetism is also like a very lucrative economic venture in Ghana, where you see children begging, selling, and doing all kinds of things on the streets. So that economic aspect that deals with the poverty they are going through does not make them want to leave the streets. So they'll rather stay there and survive than to leave the street.
The Ministry of Gender, which made a promise to end this menace 4 years ago, did not speak to me for the story, saying they were on strike.
It's also part of the reason we have high numbers of adolescent pregnancies, drug abuse, HIV, kidnappings, and all that, which are very, very serious issues. I remember a girl once told me how through the traffic, men give out their numbers. They write their numbers on small pieces of papers. And, they are sitting in luxurious cars and all, so they look rich. So these girls will call, hoping that they'll get something in return. And sometimes the men come sleep with them, infect them, impregnate them, and they are gone. And so they can't even find the fathers of their children.
Back on the streets and right at this traffic light elsewhere around Kokomlemle, another suburb of Accra, the kids are hard at work. With them, minors as young as 2. Road users seem to have had enough too.
Sometimes you feel like giving them something, but the more you give, the more it's like you're encouraging them to do it. I don't like seeing the mothers and the parents sitting there whilst we see these children crossing through the traffic and everything. I don't know. No, with these motor riders, the motorbikes passing in between the traffic, I don't think it's safe for them to.
With very little in social protection for vulnerable people like these children, more of their likes continue to flood our streets, and it seems there is no end in sight. Justice Baidu, JoyNews, Accra.
So that's the work by Justice Baidu. We have Mr. Bright Appiah joining us on phone. He is with the ChildRight International for us to look at the impact of this and how to deal with it. Mr. Appiah, good morning. Thanks very much for your time.
Good morning.
Great. Now, first of all, what do you make of this issue we have on our hand where we have these young kids on the street of Accra?
Well, it's a national security issue, and also the issue of the extent to which the state is interested in protecting the right of destitute and vulnerable children. So that is the kind of picture that it paints to all of us.
Mm. What do you think has been the issue for which we have not been able to move these kids from the street as the government promised 4 years ago?
I think that it's a matter of commitment. The numbers on the street as at 2012 was a manageable number that the state can easily decide to find alternative in providing care for these children, which we failed to do that. And that also made it possible for other people to find interest in conducting activity on the street, either by using children to beg or forcing children to be on the street, or on the basis of medical grounds. People get on the street to do that. So now, if you pick every major traffic light in Accra, you would see between 5 and 7 children on the average on the street. And that has also made it a bit difficult for the state to have a comprehensive program to deal with that because of the numbers. Because if you look at what we need to do to be able to deal with this, has been clearly stated by the law. First, the law calls for the state to have shelters for these children, and then clearly have a plan to provide some services for them, especially when it comes to the issues of medical care, and then also their education and all that. So now it is the numbers that is making it difficult for the state to decide. So it's a matter of the state deciding to say that we want to have a plan to deal with this issue. But whatever it takes, something must be done, because the steps for which we need to take to address this particular issue are clearly stated by law.
You describe this as a national security issue. 4 years on since that project was launched, it looks like we've not been able to win the fight against this. How do you assess government's effort towards dealing with this issue?
We've not even started the fight at all for us to even get to a point to say that we've not been able to deal with the matter. So the state apparatus is finding it difficult to touch it because they don't know the extent to which the damage is and how they'll be able to deal with it even when they find themselves in the middle of the sea. So that is clearly what is happening now. But it being a national security issue is the fact that we have conducted research, and we are in court now to see how best we can deal with this particular matter. We have conducted research, and it clearly shows that this is an organized activity. It is also something that affects the welfare of children. And the sad part of it is that foreigners are also taking advantage of it to run their affairs on the street, because the social security system is a bit weak for that matter. Anybody at all feels that they can carry out their business within our social environment and all that. So one is a weak system. We should serve as we should send a signal to national security that anybody at all can participate in that environment for their personal gain. Again, we've also realized that when children grow to a certain level, like 12, 15, thereabouts, you will not find them on the street again. So the question is, where do they go? Who is responsible for them? And all that. These are things that, the state must be interested in to investigate, to come to a reasonable conclusion that, if I don't deal with this particular matter, things will happen. And there's a research conducted by the state on drug abuse and all that. Clearly, it gives a signal that when the environment is loose and there's no control, the probability of children engaging in drugs at early stages are very, 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 very high. So we cannot take a lot of things for granted when it comes to that. So we've not started the fight, if you ask me. But if we start, I'm sure we will finish.
Well, Mr. Pia, the government launched the Operation Get Off the Street, and that's how it started the fight. That's to government. That's the fight that they started. So why do you say they have not started when they launched this project?
Yeah, the reason is that there's a clear pathway in dealing with this particular issue. So there's no any shortcut in dealing with it. And all the interventions that have been provided so far were done on the basis of a piecemeal. They use a piecemeal approach in tackling this particular issue. And I will not call that as intervention. Because if the police go in to arrest the children on the street, it's an arrest that they cause. And there's a clear element that one must meet in order to be arrested. And the vulnerable children do not fall within that category. So clearly, if you use that approach, you will fail. And that is what we have experienced. If you have decided to take data on the street and you did not do it in a systematic manner in order for you to get a certain average number to say that on the basis of this, I can accommodate this number of children within the social safety net of the state, then you have also failed. So clearly, any intervention that has been done, we do not conform to the pathway laid down by the law, then for me, you've not even started the fight at all. So it is on the basis of that, that's what I'm saying, that all the interventions that have been provided are not really interventions that would solve the problem. But let's go back to what the law says that we should do, we should put in place, and the services that we have to render, and institutions that are responsible to take up certain certain acts and all that. So if we haven't even touched it at all, then we have not even started the fight.
I guess government should have this knowledge that you have in terms of what the law says we should do. So if government didn't do that, why do you think was the reason why government didn't start from how the law wants or the law prescribes how this problem should be tackled?
Yeah, that is an irony for me too, as a social worker. I find it a bit difficult that to understand the position of government, knowing that the very law that you have enacted, it is very difficult for you to follow in dealing with some of these issues. So, for me, I don't know what is going on in the minds of the state in terms of what they want to do with our social structure. So it's a bit difficult for me to even go into the mind of the state to even answer the question that you've asked me. But what I know is that per the act that they put up now, it seems to me that they are not following the due laid out processes in dealing with this particular matter. And it is up to us to draw the attention that what we need to do is in the Children's Act, what we need to do is in the Beggars and Destitute Act. So if there's any reference at all that they want to make in dealing with this particular matter, they should visit these two documents and they will be able to deal with it. And what even makes it easy is that now there's a policy on family, social and family welfare, which it clearly gives a certain indication as to how we should even run some of these things in addressing social issues and all that. So we should go back and look at all these documents. And for me, if you're able to do so, we should be able to address issues of citizenship.
All right, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Mr. Bright Appiah is the Chief Executive Officer for the ChildRight International. Now, Head of Settlement Studies at the KNUST, Professor Divine Ahaji, wants clarity in the selection criteria of Ghana's affordable housing scheme. He says there is lack of public awareness on the criteria, and that's not encouraging people to express interest in the facilities. According to Professor Ahaji, the houses have the tendency to fall in the wrong hands if these measures are not put in place. He joins us live with more on this. Prof, thank you very much for your time and agreement to speak with us. How has this concern become that critical at this moment? Hello, Prof. Good morning. If you can hear me, my question is,
I can hear you.
How has this concern become that critical at this moment in time?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers. And I think, as you know, housing is an asset that requires substantial capital, which affects everybody all over the world. And that is why the issue of affordability is a concern to all governments around the world. And so the issue, as you ask me, the question is, if you say affordability, why are you saying affordability? It means as a government, you have admitted that there is what we call the full market price for housing, and there's also the social aspect. And in between that is the affordable housing, which does not meet the full market price. So government has admitted that many people cannot meet housing at the full market price. That is why it is coming in with affordable housing, which is supposed to be at a lower rate to the full market price. So once you do that admission, it means the public needs to be aware what the criteria is when you say affordable housing is being implemented. And I think that is the problem, as I said earlier, we have had in this country, because many of the affordable houses that we have built over the years in this country, we are not told what the criteria is, both in the supply side and also at the demand side and the supply side. Yeah, so that's what I can say to your question.
So if that is the case, how do we or how should government approach all of this,
That's beautiful. So that's why first I mentioned the demand side and the supply side. And you recall just recently, both the Minister for Works and Housing and the President have been hammering on the issue of providing the enabling environment for property developers. Okay, so we assume that there are going to be, for instance, incentives for them to be able to put up affordable housing in terms of maybe infrastructure. So the issue will be, what price is the house going to go to? We have to know. So if you say they should build affordable, the public should know that it is going to be, after they finish, it's going to be sold at this price. And also, within the particular location, because generally, when you are putting a house within a particular location, the expectation is that people who live around the area, if they want to access the facility, they should be able to do it. But sometimes we put up the structure and it has no relation to the people who live around the community. So that's what I'm saying, that the critical thing is what is the price and what income levels are we targeting? Because once you decide that you want to go for affordable housing, as I said earlier, you have admitted that some people cannot afford. Who are these people and how do they access the, So that is for the demand, the supply side. When it comes to the demand side, that is when people are now ready to go for the affordable housing once it is completed. So even before you start affordable housing, as I said earlier, what income level is critical. For instance, if you own a house already, can you still access the house? We don't know. If you happen to access the house and you want to rent it out, at what rate do you rent it? Is this at the full market price? Or there's an explanation for you to be able to know that once you acquire it, you cannot even rent it at the full market price? Because originally, the reason why you are going for affordable housing is because you want to make sure that people don't buy at the full market price. So how do you allow somebody to rent, to acquire the property and now rent at the full market price? If you are a first-time buyer, somebody who is coming, for instance, our new graduates who are coming out of school, is there anything to assist them to acquire such houses? These are, and many others are all issues that should have been discussed even before the affordable housing takes place. And in most cases, you should even have a list of people who are ready to move into the affordable housing when it is completed. And often we don't have all these things when we start affordable housing in this country. And that is why perhaps we are having all these problems.
But as it stands now, and per your concern, even before some of the houses are put up by the state housing company, I know that sometimes you have to even make a request ahead of time and even start paying. So how do we as a country address that lacuna between your thought of making it affordable and in fact how many people can indeed afford these houses? How should we approach this as a nation?
Yeah, so that is why if we have the target group that the housing is going to, it means right from the start in terms of design and whatever incentives government are going to give, we make sure that the houses, including material use, are targeted towards achieving that. But it looks as if, as it is now, once we say we are going for affordable housing, in terms of even material choice, we don't know what specifications in terms of government priority should go to such houses so that we can achieve the affordable house that we want. Okay. So the whole thing comes down to government being able to set down. It's a critical thing that needs to be clearly thought of before we even set out that we are putting up affordable house. And I would expect now maybe for the government to come out to tell us clearly when it comes to affordable housing, what are the criteria that are in place? And perhaps there will be the need for public discourse as well for the public to also make their input.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. I'm grateful to you for joining us. That is the head of settlement at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology there. Now to the JoyNews tracker now, and the people of Ododo constituency in the Greater Accra region are yearning for infrastructure that will speed up socio-economic development. Residents say they feel left out. The constituency has many terrible public schools that need urgent attention. For example, the Ayalolo cluster of schools is in a terrible shape. In this edition of JoyNews Tracker, residents are appealing to government to complete many infrastructural projects.
The windows are broken. We don't have good desks. We don't have textbooks and many other things.
Richmond Nyako is 12 years. Lately, his interest in attending school is waning because of the poor state of the school. Richmond School Central Mosque is located in one of the clusters of schools in Ayalolo. The schools here have not seen any renovation for many years. They are falling apart. The roofs, walls, windows, and even pillars are falling apart. Richmond fears his school may collapse and harm them.
I don't like the desks, the roofing, and the windows because it is not good. It can hurt someone.
The zingers and the woods and the tables and the cupboards to break. I want to tell Nana Kufar say you back. You come and do our tables for us and the chairs and the woods and the zingers.
In this school are children from Jamestown, Agbogboloshi, Bukum, and its environs. This new structure was an attempt to modernize the schools here. Unfortunately, the structure has stalled for many years. There is little motivation for children to come to school.
We don't have textbooks and many other things. It is only ourselves who have some.
There are more than 1,000 students in this cluster of schools, but the children have access to a 10-seater toilet facility. The Coastal Development Authority found it prudent to build another toilet facility for the students. This project was funded under the One Constituency $1 billion program.
Where were these 3 toilet facilities built?
Ayalolo cluster, like your footage showed.
Unfortunately, the construction of the toilet facility that started in 2019 has not been completed. The pupils say, although the toilet facility has not been completed, they have started using it already, so the children defecate on the concrete floors. They are pleading with government to do something quickly.
Toilet schools no edoso, but toilet ba kupenewa. Tiesiro omo say omo mama aye fast amai.
JoyNews contacted the Coastal Development Authority for an interview on why the toilet facility has not been completed. The authority is yet to respond. In the same constituency is the Accra Sempe Basic School. The school was torn down and a temporary school was constructed 6 years ago. Construction of the school started in 2016 and completion was slated for 2018. But to date, the school has not been completed. The landlord of the property where the temporary school has been sited is threatening to evict them. In 2019, residents pleaded with government to facilitate the speedy completion of the project. It is April 2022 and the same project remains uncompleted. Residents make another passionate appeal.
Government eba cha school no koni ma bia ni nye so na ma bia ni nye keke gbogbo nsibeke bia ni nye keke na mo ba wo bi o eba cha no eke ba ma aba na ba ma akeka fe politics aka school fe politics e wen ma.
I wanna let you know I got myself to blame.
The people of Ododo-Diodio yearn for government to fulfill promises made to them.
Now, joining us live with more on this is local government expert Kwesi Bani. Chief, good morning and thanks very much for agreeing to speak to us. What do you make of the instance where government would allow infrastructure projects to go, bad in areas in Ghana when, of course, we could complete them for people to use?
Well, good morning, Kojo. When one sees situations of this nature, one can but only acknowledge the challenges that we have as a nation. And if we have such a structure in the center of the capital nation, then one can imagine what the situations might be in other very deprived rural communities. Children in Accra are presumed to be of a certain privileged standard. But when you see such structures, then you ask yourself whether they are any better than those in the rural areas. The district assemblies have a basic responsibility when it comes to basic school constructions and renovations and maintenance. But if you look at the structure of this school in Odo, and it tells you that decades upon decades, not that much has been done about them. And it's such a sad situation that we cannot start a project and complete them. Even the one that is supposed by your own account to have begun in 2016. How many years now? 6 years down the line, it has not been completed. And that's a very sad situation. The assembly responsible in that jurisdiction can't do everything within a certain period of time. But at least whatever the assembly begins, they must try as much as possible to complete before they tackle another one. But it has been a very bad situation for us as leaders in this country to attempt to do so many things at the same time when the resources are not even available to tackle or complete all those things at the same time. And for me, that's a very sad account of how we either manage or mismanage public funds.
So if every resources cannot tackle anything, what is the challenge in assemblies ensuring that they have certain critical infrastructures that are completed for their people? What is the challenge?
Well, the other side of it, also that for now, the major source of revenue for this assemblies are also this assembly's common fund, which has been guided and guarded by the Constitution. And is that the central government's responsibility to also release those monies at least quarterly to the assembly. So when you hear stories about 3 quarters or even a year of release being in arrears, then you put the assemblies also in a situation where they don't have the funding to do anything or to address some of the critical issues. Because we know in the urban centers, if the assemblies want to work very hard, then they are internally generated revenues to support them in some of these activities. But when you have a situation where those things, the government, central government commitment through the local, this assembly common fund are not being released, then you put them into a very bad situation. In the case in question, if it began in 2016, then we cannot say that between 2016 and now, no disassembly common fund had been released to the district. But if indeed they have been released, much of it have been released to the assembly, and they have not been able to complete a project begun in 2016, then the managers of the assembly themselves have a number of questions to ask them. So you don't start a project, abandon it midstream, and go and start another project elsewhere, no matter how important that project might also be. So that for me is unsavory.
We should probably also bring in the role of the development authorities, because we know when the development authorities were brought up, they sort of came in to provide solutions to some of these infrastructure deficits. How do you think they've done over the years? Because there are projects that they've started. This one, for example, we're told they have a hand in it. How have they performed over the years in terms of helping assemblies deal with infrastructure deficit?
Well, apart from the Assembly Common Fund, which is constitutionally mandated, and the internal general revenues from the Assembly itself, there are always external interventions to support the Assembly. But the issue is, no matter where those sources of funding coming from, once they set their eye on a project, they must complete. Because whether it is the development authority or whatever institution was funding this project began it and abandoned it midway, it does not make sense to me. Once you begin a project, if it means forgetting about all others and completing it, you complete it, and then you can say that, oh, we have done this, then we're going to start something else. So it doesn't matter where the sources of funding of this project is concerned. The question is, when did they start? Why have they not been able to complete as of now? It's a matter of prioritizing your resources and attaching them to the needs of the people. And this, for me, is a great need for the kids in those buildings.
Now, before I let you go, you've been there before in this position for you to decide how the revenues or resources of the assembly will be used for. Why are you mostly not able to say we have started this project, we want to complete it before we move on? Is it something that we don't know?
Well, it all depends on the manager. It depends on the managers and what their priorities are and where they want to allocate their resources. I can't find myself starting a project, abandon it midway, and go to start another project, no matter what the case might be. I can't.
Okay.
And I can say, in all humility, for the 8 years that I was with ECE for Ahanta West, there was no project that was uncompleted by the time I left office. There was none.
Okay.
Any project that I began, I made sure that I completed before I left office.
Okay.
So you don't start projects, around you where you cannot, for whatever reason, you be financing, you could be other considerations, and get the project abandoned midstream. So we need to prioritize. We don't have money. We always complain. But if we don't have money, then you don't push money into projects that you cannot complete.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bani. I'm grateful to you for your time. Moving on to other stories. Member of Parliament for Boko Central, Mahama Ayaga, has described as unfortunate the decision of the Apex Court to dismiss the application to injunct the implementation of the e-levy. Speaking on the AM show, the legislator said the complexities involved in the collection of the e-levy will make it virtually impossible to reverse all payment should the final decision of the court go in their favor.
It's unfortunate. We were very confident that the court will balance things more in favor of the Ghanaian public than the government. Precisely because we think this is a constitutional matter. And being a constitutional matter, I think it shouldn't be about the money per se. It should be about the principle that law is being passed in violation of the Constitution. So we were expecting that the court will rather injunct government and wait for us to resolve the issues expeditiously. I don't think that it is practically possible that if several millions of Ghanaians through several million transactions get their monies deducted, the GRA has that infrastructural capacity, the technology, to be able to reverse and refund the monies. I mean, as we speak, because of the technological challenges in implementing this e-levy, they are staggering it. So that is an admission of the technological challenges involved in implementing this legislation. So I do not see how it is going to be easy to reverse the transactions several weeks or months after the monies have been collected. So I thought that the balance would have been in favor of holding on with the implementation of the levy, and then subsequently, depending on how the matter is resolved, we don't know the way forward. But the court thought otherwise, and ruled against us, we are bound to follow the decision of the court.
But former Deputy Attorney General Joseph Benka said the plaintiffs did not provide sufficient grounds for the injunction by the court, arguing that it will be injurious to the state for the court to have ruled in favor of the plaintiffs.
There are some basic principles that guide any court in the grant or refusal to grant an injunction.
Right.
And the courts have never departed from those basic principles.
Right.
Those basic principles are that, one, whether or not the grant or refusal to grant will cause an irreparable damage to one of the parties.
Right.
Now, this irreparable damage principle is very clear. Whether at the end of trial, when a party succeeds in vindicating its rights or getting its relief, ordinary compensation in the form of damages or etc. could be enough to assuage the suffering of the person. And also, they have this other principle, which the courts have time-tested, also applied. Whether or not, in the circumstances of the matter, the grant or refusal to grant the injunction could prejudice the outcome of the main case itself, and etc. In fact, there are quite a number of reasons they consider. But what I looked at was, you see, if they had granted the injunction and they went into stopping the implementation process, and at the end of the day, the fundamental question which the court raised, and which I agree with them without adding a single word, is assuming the state succeeds when the injunction had been granted. And so for the period that people did transfer money, you can never ever recover that which has been lost. That is irrecoverable. Flip it on the other side. The court says, and I agree with them again, that should it happen that the plaintiffs succeed in asserting their rights and winning based on the relief they are seeking in the honorable court, an order of refund can be made. However difficult you think the implementation process is, the telecos, and then the companies that have been mandated to do the collection will come to put their heads together, and of course, it's technology, be able to refund to the various individuals who transacted within the period. So that is possible. You may argue that it will be a Herculean task and it is difficult, but it's possible. But the other one is not possible, because remember that you cannot, after the end of the judgment, say that, look, all those who transacted between this period and that period when we were supposed to implement and it wasn't implemented, government go collect money from them.
Coming up in business, the Canoe and Fishing Gear Owners Association of Ghana has raised concern about the erratic supply of premix fuel. There's and more coming up after the break.
It's time to do business now with me, Beverly Broom. The Canoe and Fishing Gear Owners Association of Ghana has raised concern about the erratic supply and management of premix for distribution across the landing beaches of the country. The association say the ceaseless premix for diversion and the mismanagement of the distribution of premix fuel appear to have reached its peak, with a recent case in Keta in the Volta region as an evidence. At a news conference at Sege in the Greater Accra region, a National Executive Committee member of the Canoe and Fishing Gear Association of Ghana, Daniel Ameduame-Soti, called on the President to step in and ensure adequate supply of premix fuel to the London beaches.
The decline in catch for artisanal fishers over the years has increased hardship in fishing communities. The current economic situation in the country has further increased the hardship. The Canoe and Fishing Gear Owners Association of Ghana says the situation has been made worse by the irregular supply of premix fuel to the various landing beaches and the mismanagement of the distribution by the landing beach committees. At the news conference at Sege in the Greater Accra region, a National Executive Committee member of the Canoe and Fishing Gear Owners Association of Ghana, Daniel Ameduame-Soti, called for some rigid intervention to save the fishing industry.
Premix fuel
diversion, and the mismanagement of the distribution of premix fuel appear to have reached a crescendo, with the recent case in Keita in the Volta region as good evidence. Meanwhile, with the increased fuel prices, fishers cannot afford this super XP and engine oil as substitute for the premix fuel, which has been the case in the past.
Daniel Soti says the situation is threatening this year's close season as many fishermen are at their wit ends and want urgent steps to be taken to halt it.
It is most unfortunate that fishers who are expected to observe a month close season in July cannot go for fishing now in preparation for the close season because we cannot get the premix fuel. At the landing beaches, the high level of politicization of the sale remains the driving force behind the mismanagement and the impunity with which many LBCs mismanage the distribution of the premix fuel. Premix fuel supply and its related issues seriously threaten successful implementation of the 2022 closed fishing season.
The Canoe and Fishing Gear Owners Association of Ghana is calling on the President of the Republic to intervene in the affairs of the fishers. Richard Kwejenyakon reporting.
Now, the National Lottery Authority is cautioning patrons to be mindful of unscrupulous people who have been using the name of the institution and some of its personnel to dupe people. Director General Samia Uku says lottery is a game of chance and therefore no one can be given a winning number. He was speaking to a cross-section of the media when his outfit undertook a health screening exercise here in Accra.
Director General of the National Lottery Authority, Samia Uku, is worried about the number of scammers destroying the image of the institution he heads. He therefore wants every lottery staker to be careful about fraudsters.
What I want to appeal to them is some mischievous characters have been using the names and the brand images of management and staff of the NLA to commit crime by saying they can give them numbers. None of these numbers, nobody can give you a number. It's a game of chance. So when you play it, you win, you win. You lose, you lose. Don't fall victim to scammers who will add you to WhatsApp platforms, who will tell you we can give you numbers. Nobody can give you a number.
Mr. Uku also said his outfit will support the less privileged in society.
And for us at the NLA, we believe that as part of our corporate social responsibility, our primary focus is also to help assist many Ghanaians who are mentally, physically afflicted, who have also conditions, poor, less privileged and underprivileged. For us to also continue to assist these individuals as part of our good.
The NLA is one of the state institutions that made profit in 2020, according to the State Ownership Report.
That's all for Business Now. We have more business stories when you log on to myjoyonline.com.